slap who? Okay, no, we do this fair and square. So we Rochambeau. Winner slaps the other one. Are you ready? All right, on the count of 3. Here we go. All right, guys, gotta count it out. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, here we go, round 1. Neither one. All right, here we go. Lost some tortilla. All right, here we go. Rochambeau. He may get to do this every round. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. No, it doesn't even count. I need everybody here. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right. Yeah. Hit away. Do you want to come out of them? All right, round 3, here we go. All right, 1, 2, 3. Everybody, here we go. 2, 3.
That was sad, honey. So sad.
We need some students. All right, I need 4. Ready? 1, 2, 3. What's up? Game time. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Keep going. 1, 2, 3. Just go ahead and keep going.
Do it.
Keep going.
Oh my goodness. Get her, Ella.
One more. Let's see it. He's got layers.
Yay!
Alright, we're doing one. Have you guys seen this guy? Look, show them both. One's red, full red. Alright, we're gonna call it here because we have to get on with the rest of the game. Both you guys are winners. And all 3 of you guys can grab something in the back and we'll get candy on them.
Tortilla tastes like tortilla.
How happy are you?
What?
How happy are you, you winner of candy, for slapping your friend with their tortilla?
Oh no, I didn't even slap her is the thing.
I know, that was Why did she lose it? She just laughed.
Hayden, can I slap you with a tortilla?
Okay, now we know what a Ella tortilla slap is. Okay, we're good. All right.
Where we have different leaders sharing their different stories in the Bible. Sometimes they're their favorite story. And this week we have an awesome, amazing person. I'm going to go ahead and invite Erik, who's going to be sharing with us. One thing, I want to do something for Erik because it is also his birthday on Friday. So let's go ahead one more time and sing happy birthday to Erik. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
It's a dirge.
Happy birthday,
No, she's good. She's good.
happy birthday to you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Here's a little.
We're at church. Look at us. We're at youth group.
Thank you so much. Everyone,
With Hannah.
let's go ahead and do a round
We're
of
at
applause
youth
for
group.
Erik.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, I was not expecting that. So thanks guys for the warm welcome. Just a disclaimer here, I am not a pastor, okay? I work in IT, so I'm not necessarily really good at this public speaking thing, so you'll have to give me some grace in that department. I do have my notes, so I will refer to them frequently because I will otherwise choke myself, apparently. So, who doesn't like a little bit of destruction? You guys like destruction? Yeah! Right? Watching things like blow up and it is. So just hang in with me though, because it's going somewhere. Hey, hammers, whatever, Because I think really, if we look at the Bible like as a whole, like the Bible's a pretty brutal book, right? Like there's a lot of stories in there that are like, oh, this nation is just completely wiped off the planet, and it's like, wow, that's like a whole nationality of people that just got completely destroyed. So there is a lot of destruction in the Bible, that's for sure. So and being, a young man, a young boy, what did I like? Destruction, right? I mean, yeah, destruction and fire. So what stories in the Bible would you think about when you think about destruction? Anyone?
The one where they're like dancing around the wall and not dancing, like blowing the instruments around the wall.
Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. And the walls keep coming down. Anyone know that song? Sing it, Eric. Anyone? Okay, well, it was like everyone knew in my generation. And yes, I'm old, so. Anyway, yes, you are correct. That would be Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. So, first we're going to start out with a little bit of history. Okay, so Jericho is actually one of the oldest known cities to man. It was actually settled first around 10,500 BC, making it one of the earliest Neolithic sites in the Fertile Crescent. So, what does that tell us? It tells us this was a very desirable place to live. And when I did a little more research on it, part of the reason that was is that Jericho actually had a spring inside of it, a natural spring. And what did that mean back in those days? Well, like if you got attacked, you had walls, everyone came into the city, they shut the doors, and they just kind of waited each other out. Because there was really no way to get over the walls. There was, we didn't have airplanes and all the modern stuff that we do now. So they would wait them out. Well, Jericho was very well equipped for that. Why?
it had a spring right in the middle. And it was also a center of frequent trade. So, and the Bible also says that right before the battle, that the harvest had just been taken in. So they were equipped, right? They were equipped for a siege to be taken over. Anyhow, so the city actually wasn't as big as I thought it was. It was only about 1,200 people. And the walls actually are kind of interesting. So, I mean, so I've got a whiteboard over here, and I'm going to use it because I like whiteboards.
Yeah, whiteboard!
It's like, okay, I'm getting so excited. I mean, it's just a board that's white, okay? That literally, now I can take this blue pen and draw. Okay, yeah, it's pretty cool. Yes, wait. Okay, so this is the ground. This is the ground. Thank you. I'll be here all week. No, actually, I'm just going to be here tonight. So what do you think of when you think of a wall, right? You think of, right, wall, maybe it's got some, little spikies or something on the top, there's some like dudes up here, with like shooting arrows and stuff, and people are happy on this side, and people are all,
Yo, it's the JonTron like that.
whatever on this side. Well, this was not, I know, it's like you're there, right? It really is. So this is not what Jericho looked like, okay? So first of all, remember, this city is like, what, 12,000, 13,000 years old now? I mean, it's really, really old. So the way it starts out, right, is it's kind of on a mound, kind of on a tell, is what they call it. So over years and years, it kind of builds up this way, right? So the first wall, see, I didn't know there was more than one wall of Jericho. Did you?
Oh, yeah,
Now you do, see? Okay, so now I'm not going to draw the whole wall, okay? This is going to be terrible, so just bear with me. But so we got the first one right? Which is right here. So, and the people, are down here, they're probably not really that big. So let's get some dimensions to get the size of this. It was, okay, so the first wall was about 12 to 15 feet tall, okay? So it's actually going to be more like up here, something like that, okay? And then there was this mound that came up, right? So this mound, and this mound section was also part of the wall and reinforced it. So now that mound was it rose an additional 20 to 26 feet, okay? And then on the other side of this mound was another wall. And inside there was the city. Now the top of this wall was about 46 feet tall. So Joshua and the Israelites and all the people are strolling around down here, and they're staring up, and all they see is this 50-foot tall wall of stone and dirt, and this wall has been here since before dirt, right? I mean, it's so strong and impenetrable. I mean, it's literally said that it's impossible to penetrate. So, okay. Now, given that we've now had a little bit of a history lesson on kind of how this wall is constructed, it'll give you a little more idea of what's gonna happen here. So now we're gonna go and touch a little bit on someone who's very important in this story. Now, does anyone know who Rahab is?
Oh, that was close.
Yeah? Who's Rahab?
Did you see that weird prostitute person?
She is, yes.
That's right.
Yes, correct. So Rahab was the prostitute that lived, and where she lived, that's another thing I want to point out here, is this section in here, it was pretty big. Like, it was big enough for there to be houses in there. So when the city filled up, Out here was where all of the people that couldn't afford to live in the city lived. So this was like the slums. This was where the prostitutes lived, the poor people. And it said that her house was right up against the outer wall. So remember that for later. So anyhow, we're going to go to the book of Joshua, chapter 2, and get a little bit of background on Rahab here. So, going to do a little reading. Okay. And Joshua, the son of Nun, sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, "Go view the land, especially Jericho." And they went and came into the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and lodged there. And it was told to the king of Jericho, "Behold, men of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land." Then the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come to search out all of the land." And then I lost my voice. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, "True, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And when the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them." But she brought them up onto the roof and hid them within the stalks of flax that she had laid on the roof. So the men pursued them on the way, all the way to Jordan and the fords, and the gate was shut as soon as the pursuers had gone out. Okay, so what does that tell us? That tells us that spies came in and Rahab lied to the king. Now, you got to kind of think for a second. Why would a prostitute, probably someone, one of the lowest of the social ladders, right? Why would a prostitute kind of throw herself out there and lie for 2 guys that she just met, right? A couple of guys that are against where she even lives. So, and I think the answer is a little further down in this book. So, at verse 8, before the men laid down, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, "I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you." Interesting wording. "For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who are beyond the Jordan, whom you devoted to destruction. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord our God, He is God in the heavens above and the earth beneath. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly with you, you will also deal kindly with my father's house, giving me sure sign that you will save me alive and my father and mother and brothers and sisters and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death." And the men said to her, "Our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell of this business of ours, then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you." Wow. So, obviously, word had come, right? That the Israelites were on the way, and God was with them, Rahab made it very clear right there. In verse 8, "The fear of you has fallen upon us." Wow, that's got to be some pretty serious stuff that's coming. And verse 11, "Our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you." Wow, that's harsh. So what were they feeling in the land? They were feeling fear. Straight up, this whole verse is just full of fear, right? So Rahab is afraid that her and her family are going to get taken as part of this whole situation. But then she makes that promise, and as we know a little bit later in the story, well, you don't know yet because we haven't read it. So, well, those of you that know, but those of you that don't know are going to know. So, Anyhow, now you've got a little bit of background on Rahab. And basically, after the king had left, night fell, and remember where she lived, here on the wall, when they were able to get out of her house, over the wall, and away to safety. She told them to go and hide in the mountains for 3 days, which they did, and they were safe. So now we move forward a little bit to where the Israelites actually show up at Jericho. So it says in verse 6, or chapter 6, chapter 6, verse 1. Now Jericho was shut up on inside and outside because of the people of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have given Jericho into your hand, with its king and mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all of the men of war going around at once. Thus shall you do for 6 days. 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. And when they make the long blast with the ram's horn, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up, everyone straight before him." Okay. So, they've got their marching orders from God. Now, does it sound kind of weird to you? I mean, really, it's like, okay, we're going to attack this city. How are we going to do it? I'm going to walk around it. The first day, we're going to walk around it one time. And they're going to blow their horns and walk around it. Okay, first day. Done. Go back to camp. You know? Catch a nap, watch a show, whatever. Next day, get up. Same thing. Walking around the city. And again, back to camp. No one's yelling though. It's only the ram's horns and the priests, right? And so, again, 3rd day, 4th day, 5th day, 6th day, we walk around the city. But then the 7th day comes. The 7th day is different. So, let's read what happens on the 7th day. In verse 15, on the 7th day they rose early at the dawn of the day and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. 7 times. They got to work out that day. It was only on that day that they marched around the city 7 times. And at the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city and all that is within it shall be devoted to the Lord for destruction. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall live, because she hid the messengers whom we sent. But you, keep yourselves from the things devoted to destruction, lest when you have devoted them, you take any of the devoted things and make the camp of Israel a thing for destruction and bring trouble upon it. But all the silver and gold and every vessel of bronze and iron are holy to the Lord, and they shall go into the treasury of the Lord." So the people shouted, and the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout, and the wall fell down flat, so the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they captured the city. Then they devoted all the city to destruction, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkey, with the edge of the sword. They went in and laid waste to this place. Just destroyed it. So I'll finish up with just a little more here. Verse 22, "But the 2 men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, 'Go into the prostitute's house and bring out from there the woman and all who belong to her, as you swore to her.' So the young men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father and mothers and brothers and all who belonged to her. And they brought all of her relatives and put them outside of the camp of Israel. And they burned the city with fire and everything in it. Only the silver, the gold, and the vessels of bronze and iron they put in the treasure of the house of the Lord. But Rahab the prostitute and her father's household and all who belonged to her, Joshua saved alive. And she has lived in Israel to this day because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy on Jericho. Interesting stuff, right? I mean, that's so. And just to clarify, like complete destruction. So, like, you go and take a city. What normally happens? Well, you loot the place, right? You take the big screens, you take the stereos, you take all the jewelry, all the good stuff, money. No, all the food. You got 48-pack of Twinkies. You're going to take that, right? Really? So, right? I know you leave that in like one night, but God was very specific, and he said, no, commit the whole city, with exception of the precious metals, to destruction. And that's very important, right? Why? Because we do what God instructs us to do, first of all. And there's proof in the modern day, like they've done some excavation of Jericho's site, and they have found full jars of grain still there. Now, that tells us, that they were prepared. But it also tells us what? Well, grain was a very valuable commodity. It was like money, right? So a jar of grain, if the city had been taken, would they have not taken those jars of grain as well? Absolutely, because they were worth a fortune. But they were all left. They found them, burnt up remains of jars of grain. And that just goes to reinforce the truth behind this biblical story, right? So, really interesting stuff. So what do we get out of this? Really, because of Rahab's faith and her courage to go against, the establishment, go against the rulers, and follow her faith and follow what she knew. Because she knew she had everything to lose. And if she didn't, she would perish like everyone else. One other interesting thing that I found in my research, how was Rahab's house spared? So during these archaeological digs that they've done during the 20th century, they found that at the north end of the Tell of Jericho, actually during the German excavation from 1907 to 1909, older than me. Okay, yeah, I wasn't around back then. But they actually found a portion of the mud brick wall that was still standing. And it was standing at the height of 8 feet, which would have been exactly the height at which a house would have been built up against that wall. So, while there is no proof, one could certainly draw the conclusion that perhaps that one section of wall was where Rahab's house was. And that's why that one section of wall remains standing to this day. Interesting. The Bible has so many layers, so much great info. Anyhow, so I guess really, what are the things to think about out of this message? I'll kind of wrap it up now. For me, it really spoke to God's faithfulness, right? God's faithfulness to Rahab through his people and through his incredible power, and saving her and her family in that situation. God's power demolishing the wall and giving victory to Joshua through his faithfulness, right? Because again, he was told to walk around the city for a week, and the walls will come down. Impenetrable fortress. Okay, Takes a lot of faith, doesn't it? Take a lot of faith from me. And that leads to the next thing, the power of obedience, right? So, if God told you to march around the city for 7 days, would you do it? Honestly? I don't know that I could say yes to that. I would like to think that I would. And maybe if we did, we'd see a few more walls within our own lives fall down. Right? The other thing that I've always gotten out of the story of Jericho is that it wasn't a show of force, a show of manpower. It was a show, yes, of faith and devotion, but it was also really kind of brought to my mind the power of music, right? Because who was it that led in front of everyone? It was the priests and the musicians, right? Not the soldiers, not the guys with the big shields and swords that were just going to go and mess people up. It was the musicians. And it was when the musicians combined with the voices of God's people that those walls collapsed. So, and that kind of makes me think along, like, what do you listen to when you're just out and about? What's on your Spotify playlist? And keep in mind, I think you've all heard garbage in, garbage out, right? That's kind of an old school saying. Be careful of what you listen to, because it will have an effect on your mind and on your spirit, and potentially with your relationship with God. So, really, that's kind of all I got for you tonight. It's just a really fun story. There's so much more that I could share. I mean, this was just like the first layer of the onion that I found about Jericho. So, yeah, dig into the Word, because it's good stuff, and God will use you through what He's got in His Word. So, thanks everyone for listening and being so attentive and blown away.
Great job, Erik. Great job.